Hey guys, it is the Comics Kid 2099 and I am here to do a rant video. I haven't done one of these in a little while and something kind of occurred to me today that I could do a video on. So here I am doing a video. I like to read comic books. If you have seen any of my videos on my channel, that is probably apparent. The problem that I am encountering more and more is that it feels to me like the comic book companies are making it harder and harder for me to read comic books. Let me explain. I have a limited amount of money. I cannot buy every comic book that Marvel or DC Comics puts out. Now, that is counter to what Marvel and DC would like to be happening. What they want to happen is every fan who is buying any comic from them needs to be buying every comic from them. At least that seems to be the mindset that both of these companies have put themselves in. DC Comics, pretty much ever since the New 52 started, and I would say even before that even, they've shuffled their properties around in such a way where you really can't just read one comic book without being confused and being made where you should go and read another one. Let me make an example. I picked up the first volume of Animal Man from the New 52. That was the very first book from that rebooted universe that I got. And at the end of the book, we're getting hints that Animal Man is going to be crossing over with Swamp Thing. Now, I will not be picking up Animal Man Volume 2. I will not be picking up Swamp Thing Volume 1 or any of the other volumes of Swamp Thing. The reason is, I did not want to see any crossovers in the New 52. I felt like after a reboot like that, you really need to give all of your books plenty of time to kind of get themselves established so that you can understand, okay, so this is what the status quo is for Animal Man or Swamp Thing or whatever. And I really didn't like the idea that you're going to have a crossover between two of these books before they've even gotten on their feet. I just didn't really care for that. And so even though at one point I was interested in reading Animal Man and Swamp Thing, because the suits at DC Comics thought that it would have been cool to have a crossover between these two, I dropped both of those. Actually, I dropped Swamp Thing preemptively and I dropped Animal Man. And to me, it's like that on a grand scale at both Marvel and DC. I am a huge X-Men fan, but 5 to 6 years ago, the way I read X-Men was, if there was an X-Men series that I liked, I read it, and if I didn't like an X-Men series, I didn't bother with it. So, for a while, I did not bother reading Uncanny X-Men because it was going through a period where I really didn't like any of the stories and the creative team just wasn't doing it for me. I really wouldn't be able to do that nowadays. With X-Men, pretty much for the last 4 or 5 years, there have been endless crossovers within that franchise. And you have Avengers vs. X-Men, you have Second Coming, you have Necrosha, you have Messiah Complex, Messiah War, you've got the upcoming Battle for the Atom. You literally cannot go an entire year without some crossover touching all of these books. So, I used to be a huge fan of the X-Men Legacy series when Mike Carey was writing it. And I really liked that series, but then you went an entire year where it seemed like every issue in that series was crossing over with big events and with series that I was not reading. And that made me drop X-Men. For a little while, around 2010, I was not reading any single issues because of these big events. Now, it also, a good reason that I dropped the series was because my comic book shop closed, but I could have easily gone to another comic book shop to keep reading the book if they had done a better job of making me want to stay on. And I can kind of see what the reason for this is from a business perspective. If you have somebody reading 3 books and then you know that those people are not reading 3 other books, then you're going to want to take the popular books and you're going to want to cross them over with the books that people aren't reading. And then this collector mentality will take over where if I'm reading X-Men Legacy but I'm not reading Wolverine Origins and then the two cross over, well, I'm going to want to buy the issues of Wolverine Origins that crosses over with X-Men Legacy. The problem is, when they did this with the storyline called Original Sin, I stopped reading Wolverine Origins after the story was over. This has never made me want to keep reading a series that I was not reading before a crossover. I can't think of a time when this idea of let's try and get fans who are reading this book to go and read another one, I can't ever think of a time where that's worked for me. Maybe it's worked for other people. In fact, I'm sure it has. I'm getting sick and tired of all of the crossovers in general. Let's just say this year, the year 2013, we just a couple weeks ago, a big event called Age of Ultron just ended at Marvel Comics. Later this year, we're going to get another big event called Infinity. I don't even know what it's about. It has something to do with Thanos. Also later this year, we're going to get an X-Men event called Battle of the Atom. Okay, that is 3 big events in the year 2013. To me, a big event, let's say something like House of M, or Civil War, or Secret Invasion, or Dark Reign, or Age of Ultron, these big events, any one like this, needs to have vast and fundamental consequences for the universe that it happens in. Let's say Age of Ultron happens and it has big, huge consequences and ramifications for the Marvel Universe. In my opinion, the Marvel Universe then needs to have lots of time to explore those ramifications and consequences. If this book has something really huge and a big impact for the Fantastic Four, we need 2 or 3 years to really come to an understanding of, oh wow, the Fantastic Four really did change after Age of Ultron. Now, I didn't read Age of Ultron, so I don't know what all of the ramifications were. I've heard a couple of spoilers, but I don't know if Fantastic Four is a good example or not. It's just an example for this analogy. Anyway, the big problem is Marvel is not letting us do that. In fact, DC isn't really letting us do that either, although ever since the New 52, they've really just been handling smaller crossovers. So you'll have a crossover within the Batman books, and then you'll have a crossover within the Superman books, which, again, I don't like, because if I only want to read OMAC and I don't want to read Justice League International or whatever comic book crossover with OMAC, then I don't want to see a crossover between those books. And if they do crossover, then that's going to make me not want to read OMAC when initially I was going to read it. Marvel is not really giving themselves enough time to explore the consequences of these big events. Each event just seems to be a small chapter that doesn't really have a beginning, middle, and end. Civil War just leads directly into Secret Invasion, which leads directly into Dark Reign, which leads into Heroic Age. None of these ever seem to be a complete story. They just seem to be a means unto another story. And I don't like that. I don't like that these stories cannot be complete stories. They are just small chapters in an ongoing story that isn't ever going to end. This all, at Marvel anyway, this all really got started around the time of Avengers Disassembled, which was almost 10 years ago. And here we are. These events have not stopped. They've kept going, and they just keep leading into each other. When does it end? When can you say, okay, this is what it's all been leading to, and then actually mean it? I know a few times they've said, this is what it's all been leading to, and then that event will just lead into another one. And to me, it just makes me want to stop reading comic books. I know that I've been pretty negative about this video, and I'm sure if I looked hard enough, I could go out there and I could find plenty of books that really don't take part in this crossover madness. I know my favorite ongoing series right now is from Oni Press, so you know, I could always go to the indie companies, Dark Horse, IDW, Boom Studios. I could always go to those and read plenty of books there, but sometimes I might want to read something from DC and Marvel, and right now they're making it very hard for me to want to keep doing that. I'm curious, do you guys agree with me? Am I just an old codger who needs to get over himself? Times are changing and this is how it is now. Tell me what you think in the comments below, or you can make a video response. I will see you guys later in the week with some other kind of video. Until then, I will see you guys next time. Have a good day.